Step 5 of the sales process. Okay, so now you have an appointment. Okay, I want you to think about the term sales process. That implies that selling is not an event, but it is a process. So I want you to think about when you're interacting with people that, if you're calling them and they don't want to meet with you now, they're still in the process. So I always leave the door open to call them back. If you set up an appointment and for some reason they cancel or reschedule, they're still in the process. If you take them through your appointments and they don't buy from you, they're still in the process. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So, you build up an inventory of potential people, you keep in contact with them, and over time, some of those people do become clients. Okay, so now you have an appointment. Okay. If you are a professional salesperson, then relationship is pretty important to your process. And so it's important that you behave correctly in the first appointment because that continues to build the trust. They have the trust in you that they've agreed to meet with you, and now you've got to build trust in this first appointment. So how do we do that? Well, there's a number of things you can do. I had an agenda. I had a very simple agenda for my first and second meeting. And for the first meeting, there's only 4 things on the agenda. Number 1, introduction. That's where you talk about you and you get to know each other a little bit, okay? Next thing is analysis. In my case, a gap analysis, where you're looking for the difference between where they are now and where they would like to be. And the difference between those two is the gap. That's the gap. And so I'm looking for the gap. So analysis is part of it. Then based on that analysis, the next item on the agenda is next steps. Where do we go from here? What are we going to do next? And finally, how we can work together. How the client can help you. And that's where you introduce a referral process. Okay? So again, the 4 steps are introduction, analysis, next steps, and working together. Okay? So let me talk about each of those a bit more. So the introduction is really where you lay the foundation of the relationship. In my case, I tell a story about choices and dignity and keeping families together when the best things happen and worst things happen. And that information is in my book, The Passionate Salesperson. I'm not going to spend time here going through all of that, but that sort of tells them how I'm going to behave and what they can expect from me in the process. And that's part of the building of the trust. Okay, then we move on to the next one, which is the analysis. And I'm like their doctor. I'm their financial doctor. I can't do my job if I don't know where they are now and where they'd like to be. If I don't understand this base, what they've done so far, have they invested, have they saved, have they protected, what are they doing, how much do they earn, what kind of relationships, children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I want to find that base information and then talk about where do they want to be in the future, what's important to them, from a savings, investment, protection point of view. And then once we identify a gap and they begin to take responsibility for the gap, then what we do is we talk about, okay, what are the next steps? We set another meeting, I'm going to go do analysis. We're going to walk down some sort of pathway, either insurance, investment, savings, or all of it, or whatever. So that's really what I'm doing in the analysis portion and the next steps. And then finally, when I talk about how we can work together, I get feedback from them about how they felt about the process. What are they going to take away from this experience? And based on that, I'm going to suggest to them that there's probably people within their circle, their family, their friends, their acquaintances, their colleagues, who might benefit from this process. I'm not going to ask for referrals in the first appointment. I'm just going to position it. Okay? All right? So, probably a good number of your appointments are done online. In my case, when I was an advisor, there was not an online option. Everything was in person. And I had a written agenda and that I would share with them. I would take an agenda, I would put their name at the top, I'd put the date, and I'd put those 4 items. Again, introduction, analysis, next steps, and how we can work together. Okay? And if they, in the conversation on the telephone, had raised anything that they wanted to ask about, I would have added that to the agenda as well. Okay? And I would give them a copy. So, but you can do that electronically. You can provide a copy before the meeting, or you can, during the meeting, say, well, I've put together an agenda for our meeting today, and here's the things I would like to cover, and you just screen share it with them. And then they know where you're going. And as you do it, you tick it off. What's really important about having an agenda, it keeps you honest. You know, I've done that. Okay, now I got to move on to next steps. Next, I got to move on to how we work together. And then you don't forget to do something like ask for referrals, which I've heard so often from advisors. God, I forgot to ask. Well, the agenda keeps you honest. Okay? So again, the first appointment is an appointment where you do not ask them to buy anything. You do not ask for referrals. You do not make any recommendations. This is all fact gathering, the first appointment. It's building that relationship, you know, and that leads to the second appointment, which we'll talk about in the next video. So again, if you're looking for more detail, you certainly, in my book, The Passionate Salesperson, there's a lot more information there with scripts and everything else and sample agendas and whatever. But again, I want you to treat this as a professional salesperson. Remember what I said in the past, if you want to be paid like a professional, don't act like an amateur. Look at your first appointment as a chance to build the relationship, to build trust, and do it slowly, cautiously, with a lot of respect for the customer. And what you want to do is you want the customer to walk with you. And I want to talk about that just for a minute. It's really important when you're taking the customer through the process, you're watching for body language. You're watching that they're not playing with their phone, they're not looking at their watch, they're not rolling their eyes, they're not withdrawing from the conversation. Because the moment you see them withdraw is the moment you have to stop and invite them back into the conversation. Find out what the obstacle is. You know, is it something you said or didn't say? Do they have a question? Something they don't understand? And you've got to handle that so you keep them in the process and they walk with you. Because that's why they call it a sales process. It's a process, not an event. Have a great day.